What's going on, everybody? It's etaprime back here again. Today we're going to be building a budget Bazzite 1440p gaming machine. Now this is actually pretty awesome, and with all of the deals recently on the parts used in this video, you can get out pretty cheap putting something like this together, and if you don't mind going used, you can lower that price even more. First things first, if you don't want to use Bazzite, you can always install Windows on a machine like this and still see some really great performance. The main reason I wanted to use Bazzite is just kind of the ease of use, console style interface, really made for the living room. And if you're not familiar with Bazzite OS, basically they've taken all of the great features from the Steam Deck and packaged it so we could install it on basically any x86 machine. And it works very well with Radeon GPUs. So getting right down to the parts used in this build, personally I picked up most of my stuff used on eBay, but recently over on Newegg there was a pretty awesome deal. I've got one on the way, it's going to be about a week before it ships, but basically they were offering the Ryzen 5 5600X, a B550 motherboard, and 16 gigabytes of RAM for $241, but using code FTT355 you got $47 off, and after tax it comes out to $208. When I ordered this, you also got a 512 gigabyte M.2 SSD. They've taken that deal away at the time of making this video. I'll leave this link down below if it's still available. I still think that this would be an awesome deal. And really, when it comes down to it, the build I'm using here is basically the same thing. I just picked up my stuff used on eBay. I've got an Asus Prime B550 motherboard, Ryzen 5 5600X, so we've got 6 cores, 12 threads. The 5600X new inbox does come with a cooler that's going to be plenty for you. This was just separate because I was picking these parts up used. I'm going with 16 gigabytes of Team 3200 megahertz. This is actually the same kit they're selling over on Newegg right now. And I've got a low-cost 1 terabyte M.2 SSD. It's actually a PCIe 3.0 drive, all in $245. It's actually a little more than it is over on Newegg with that deal going on. But yeah, I picked this up before I knew any of those deals were going to be happening over there. When it comes to the case I opted to use, this actually used to be one of the best budget cases you could buy due to the price, but the price has gone up to $70. Now it does come with the power supply, so we get a 400 watt power supply. It's the Rosewell FBM X2. It used to be you could pick these up for around 55 bucks. They're now 70 on Newegg or 65 on eBay. But if you're buying new and you take a look on Amazon, you can pick up a pretty cheap case which might actually look a little better than this, and then just pair it up with a 550 watt power supply. This is a bit on the lower end side with that 400 watt given the parts that I'm going to be using, but we're not going to go over that limit, and I've been doing some testing with this whole setup. It's been working just fine. And given that the price on this has been raised to $70, you could probably piece together a pretty good looking case and 550 watt power supply for around 70 bucks over on Amazon. So now I've got my storage, RAM, CPU, motherboard, and power supply installed here. But we're not going to be able to run games at 1440p on this 5600X without a GPU. In fact, that 5600X doesn't even have an iGPU built in. And I definitely wanted to stay with AMD on the GPU side of things because we got great compatibility over there in Linux. So what I picked up was a used Radeon RX 6750 XT. You can pick these up for around $280 used on eBay or $319 over at Newegg. And if you wanted to throw a little more money at it, get something a bit newer, you could go with the Power Cooler 7700 XT. It's got 12 gigs of VRAM and it will outperform this, but those are $350 brand new. So yeah, this is a pretty large version of the RX 6750 XT. This is the ASRock Phantom Gaming version, so they do like putting beefy coolers on them. It does fit inside of this case here, but I have to remove this rear fan. I can put it back in later on. I just have to angle the GPU in there so I can slot it in. And to tell you the truth, most of the other 6750 XTs out there aren't going to be this long. They're not going to be as big as this. ASRock just loves putting those super big coolers on these things. But yeah, even with this Rosewell case, we can get it down in there. Now that I've got everything together, I can go ahead and boot this up, and I've already installed Bazzite. I've made a couple tutorials on installing it on handhelds. It's basically the same process, but it's super simple to do. You'll need a USB drive and you'll install it just like any other operating system. Over on their website, they do have a full wiki. I'll leave a link in the description. It's really easy to get up and running with it. And we should be booting up here shortly. There we go. It's just verifying because I actually pulled this drive from another PC I was running the same operating system on. But everything's been working great with this setup here. And this board didn't come with Wi-Fi, but most chips are going to be supported by Bazzite. I'm just going to be using Ethernet. We've got a port in the back that worked out just fine. And when it comes to controlling the operating system, mouse and keyboard, or basically any controller is going to be supported. All right, so here it is. Now this might look a little different than, the regular old Steam Deck theme, and that's because inside of Bazzite, I was able to install Urcdkey Loader. And from there, I've installed CSS Loader. We'll just disable what I've got going on here. Give you a look. Regular old Steam Deck theme. But there's a lot that we can use to customize this, and it's really easy to get this installed. I'll show you in just a second. But let's just say you were using an Xbox controller. If you press the A button and the Microsoft button, it'll bring up our side menu here. We can change the volume, brightness, airplane mode, Wi-Fi. But over here, we've got our performance overlay. I've got the frame limiter set to 120 Hertz because that's what my monitor runs at. But you can totally disable this. Half rate shading. We can head on down here to our scaling mode, enable FSR system-wide if you want to. Really, when it comes down to it, we've got everything here that the Steam Deck does. Now with this system here, I wanted to give you a look, so we'll go to our settings, system. If we scroll on down, you can see we've got that 5600X, 6 cores, 12 threads, 16 gigs of RAM, and we've got that Radeon RX 6750 XT. I had this installed on another system. The video driver I'm using right now is actually the compatibility profile. This has been updated through Bazzite, but we're working with the 6750. It is a little older than a new 7000 series card. If you install this fresh on your system, you're going to have a newer driver here, which may allow you to get a little better performance. But the way it is, I didn't want to change anything because this thing works great like it is. And again, if you want to do some customization here, I'll just enable one of my favorites. This is actually just Pip-Boy. I think it looks really good. What we're going to do is open up our menu. We're going to go to Power, and we're going to swap over to our desktop. As you can see, Bazzite has a full-fledged desktop interface built in. We do have Discover, just like we do on the Steam Deck, but my favorite thing here is from Utilities. And as soon as you boot this up for the first time, you're actually going to be greeted with the Bazzite portal. This makes it very easy to get up and running really quickly. So from here, Urcdkey Loader is definitely one that I wanted to get, those extra themes. There's a lot of other stuff that we can do with it also. If you want EMU Deck, Sunshine, Oversteer, there's a lot of great utilities that you can automatically install directly from here. I've got this stuff installed already, so let me go ahead and get over to the next page. Applications. You need some different web browsers, more emulation, some streaming, music services. It's all right here. But again, since we're working with Linux, you could always open up Terminal, install what you'd like from here, or use Discover. If you've ever messed around with the Steam Deck in desktop mode, you'll know exactly what's going on here. Basically, nice little app market, thousands and thousands of different applications that we can install. And since this can be used as a gaming machine and a desktop, you could go with an image editor like GIMP if you want to, VLC for viewing some videos. It's really up to you. Through here, if you want to go with the standalone emulators, not an issue with Bazzite. Return to gaming mode, right up here, or you can just go ahead and reboot. And now you can start gaming. And I want to show you what this thing can do. I was really impressed by it. And of course, we've got that 6750 XT, which is not a slouch for a Radeon card. It's still a pretty decent card here. Picking one up used on eBay around $280. Brand new on Newegg at the time of making this. I've seen them for $319. So it's really up to you. But keep in mind that 7700 XT with 12 gigs of VRAM is around $349 for the power cooler version. So if you did want a bit of a newer card, you could go with that. It will work with Bazzite. But the first game we're going to go with here is Cyberpunk 2077. Go ahead and start this up. When it comes to Cyberpunk 2077, I'm at 1440p Ultra with FSR set to auto. There are ways to get a lot more out of this, but I think this is more than enough for this 6750 XT running in Linux right now. We're seeing averages in the mid-70s with this game, and while playing through this, it never went under 60. And by the way, with FSR, I am using FSR 2.1. Right now, for some reason, the way it feels inside of Linux is the new update for FSR 3 in this game just doesn't perform as well as 2.1 in my experience. Spider-Man Miles Morales 1440p, very high, no FSR, no frame gen. We'll go into the settings and I'll show you here. 1440. Moving on down, you can see frame generation and scaling is completely off. Very high settings. This is one that performs absolutely amazing in Linux with these Radeon cards. Never really had a big issue with this. I mean, on lower end iGPUs, of course, you do have to drop those settings down. But we're maxed out right now with no frame generation, no scaling at 1440. Elden Ring is another one that I wanted to test, 1440p, high settings. At maximum settings, we did have more dips under that 60, and this is one of those games that's locked at 60 on basically every platform. I'm sure there's mods out there that would allow us to kind of go over 60 with it. But even with the few dips that we had at high settings, it really felt great. If I didn't have that frame counter on, I mean, I wouldn't even notice any kind of dips or anything like that. And even at maximum, lowest I saw was 53 when there was a lot of particle effects on screen. Again, if you weren't paying attention to a frame counter, you could play through it just fine. Next one I tested was Wukong, and I'm just using the built-in benchmark here. We're at 1440p medium with 80% res scale using FSR here. So I was kind of expecting to have to drop settings down, and we did have to go to medium. But with it set up like this, we got an average of 73 FPS. This is just a harder one to run. Witcher 3, Ultra 1440p, maxed out here, and I knew we wouldn't have an issue with this game.
When'd you last touch a wench?
Run, Roach.
I also wanted to see how well Starfield would perform on this setup here. We're at 1440 medium with FSR set to 70%. No frame gen with any of these games, and we could probably use a few of these settings drop down a bit, or maybe even just go to 1080 high with it, but for the most part, this did perform much better than I thought it would. Hogwarts Legacy 1440p, ultra settings with FSR set to balanced. I wouldn't mind taking this down to high settings, and it would definitely up that frame rate for us. While I was playing it, never went under 60 FPS, but it does get pretty close here. This is one of those games that's kind of hit or miss on Linux. Some systems it just works really well, on others it kind of falls right on its face.
Incendio. Accio. Confringo.
God of War Ragnarok 1440p high with FSR set to balance. This is one that I actually expected we'd need to use frame gen with, but for the most part, it did perform pretty good on this little setup here. Going into this one, I wasn't sure how well the 6750 would handle it, and I'll tell you, at high settings, we did have some dips under 60 FPS in certain areas, but it was pretty smooth the way it is.
Tyr was a friend to the Giants. I wonder if he and Mom ever met. If he was a part of the rebellion here.
And the final game I tested here was Bear Country. No, it's not Bear Country, but I get attacked by him all the time while playing through this. 1440p, very high, no scaling, no frame gen. I knew that this one was going to perform well. I've had really good luck with this game on basically every platform I've tested it on. Even lower end iGPUs handle this just fine. So overall, I think this build turned out great. And again, if you wanted to install Windows, you always could. One thing I would definitely recommend is just having a bigger power supply. Now, we're working with a 400 watt supply here. The Ryzen 5600X is a 65 watt part, but while compiling shaders, I've seen it hit around 90 watts. And as for that 6750 XT, it'll do a peak of 288 watts. Now that's total peak, that's an extreme use case scenario. And while gaming at 1440p, the maximum I saw it hit was 214 watts, and that was just for a second. I believe it was the Witcher 3 that did that. But while I'm doing my testing with these machines, I've got it plugged into a kilowatt meter so we can get an idea of average gaming power consumption from the wall, exactly how much it's pulling, and we can do peak also. and the peak wattage draw was 338. Now we've got a 400 watt power supply. It is getting pretty close. This is going to last for a while, but yeah, I would definitely recommend at least a 550 with a setup like this. And realistically, with this case costing 70 right now instead of the old price of around 50 to 55 bucks, you can probably just piece something together with a 550 watt power supply and a better looking case. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. Really appreciate you watching. I'll leave links to everything I used in this build down below. And again, if you head over to Bazzite's website, it's really easy to install. I mean, if the need is there, I could do a full install video. Just let me know in the comments below. But that's it for this one. And like always, thanks for watching.